Welcome to episode 6 of The Rational Hour. I am your host, Kyle. As we close the book on March and college basketball season wraps up, Andy and I will go from discussing the 16 teams down to the Final Four, which will conclude this upcoming weekend, followed by the National Championship on Monday, April 6th. The focus of the podcast will shift to baseball, mostly, and then sprinkle in other sports storylines. Today, there will be a tough podcast for us as Iowa and Iowa State were both eliminated from contention. Let's look at how that happened in the Final Four matchups this upcoming weekend. Welcome back, Andrew, to the Rational Hour. It was another weekend of college basketball. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again this week. It was indeed another great weekend of March Madness. We had some crazy buzzer beaters with the Connecticut Duke game. Both of our teams unfortunately lost. But yeah, overall, still an awesome weekend.
Let's get into that breakdown a little bit. As we start in the East, and we got Duke and St. John's was the first Sweet 16 matchup. Duke was the better team, even with the Bruiser brothers and Evans was having a good game. They did get Foster back for this game, though, I believe. So, I mean, it was just a good matchup. Duke ended up winning 80-75. Richard Pitino, even though he did not reach the Elite Eight, he got a new contract already that was announced today. Tough game for St. John's to come up short, but, still something to be proud of.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think St. John's was necessarily going to win this game. And then during it, you could tell Duke was in control. But then St. John's made a little run and took a lead. I thought there's maybe a chance they were going to pull off the upset. Fortunately, like you said, the Boozer brothers, Evans, and having Caleb Foster, he played like just under 20 minutes, but had a really good game. Just too much for them. I thought, like you said, staying at St. John's. Didn't necessarily think like North Carolina or let's say Kansas comes open. I didn't see him leaving. He loves New York. He's got that billionaire booster, um, letting him do whatever he wants. Good season for them, but I'm sure they're a little jealous of Connecticut. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, so going down the bracket, we got Michigan State and Utah, and that was a very interesting game because Michigan State was down early by 18 plus points, and they kind of slowly came back to the second half and actually made a game out of it towards the end.
Yeah, I was shocked early on. I was like, man, Michigan State has no shot. They were playing terrible. They couldn't make a basket. Slowly come back, like you said. Ultimately, it was just too tall of a task to get the win. It was a hard game to watch, not gonna lie. It was so physical. I mean, the way Izzo likes to play, but just like the offense was not there. And ultimately, I think the better team won.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan State, Fears didn't look like he had his best game. He had 4 turnovers, 4 fouls. I mean, just tough game when their best players struggling a little bit, but I think they did manage to fall back and make a game of it. UConn being UConn with Dan Hurley and their slew of freshmen among others.
Yeah, I Michigan State to me was never even an Elite Eight team. Definitely not a Final Four. I know people like to pick them, but I just thought, like you saw, unless Fears has like an awesome game, plus the guys around him play well, I didn't think they were gonna go that far.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really get much help from their bench. They only had 6 bench points. I guess UConn only had 5. UConn had 8 bench points. But it just seemed like UConn was kind of, as we said, came out early and made the first punch, and then Michigan State just never truly was able to fully recover from that.
Yeah, I just don't think they're offensively talented enough to mount a almost 20-point comeback when they're in the Sweet 16. Ultimately, it cost them.
And then moving on to UConn versus, that was a heck of a game. It was kind of a flip for UConn. After nearly blowing the game against Michigan State, they were getting blown out by Duke, and they made a comeback.
Yeah, honestly, that was a game where I was almost like, okay, I don't even need to watch the second half. Duke's just in control. Connecticut showing that they're not like the Connecticut of the couple years when they won the tournament. And then all of a sudden, it's just like a couple people text me, hey, this is a close game. You start keeping your eyes on it. And then next thing you know, just a Duke all-time collapse, which was so many hilarious moments to it. One, just Braylon Mullins' shot just couldn't have been more of a pure swoosh. Just the fact that you could just see John Shire, like, oh my God, what is happening? The still photo of that after was hilarious. For all the White Lotus fans, the meme with the guy holding the gun and the Duke shirt, it's just so easy to just laugh at Duke in that moment. Like, what an epic collapse.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about they only had two baskets over the final 5 or 6 minutes, I believe. Even going back to that final turnover they had, they inbound the ball, they get it back to their, I think it was five passes it to Caden Boozer up near mid-court. And Boozer didn't really need to dribble, he just needed to hold on to the ball. And he tried passing it through two oncoming defenders, and they just knocked it, batted it down kind of, and it went behind them, and they recovered it, and they made that back pass to Mullins, who was 0 for 4 on threes entering the day, and he just drained that one. Perfect, really rhythm for him. Posture. I mean, it was such a beautiful shot.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, perfect shot, didn't touch the rim from a freshman. It was crazy because, yeah, Boozer didn't need to pass it. He wasn't in danger of a 10-second violation. But at the same time, if you look at it, Shire was yelling like pass or like, he was motioning to
Yeah,
throw it up the court,
yeah,
which is like, what are you doing in that scenario? And they had a timeout too, didn't they? Like, why did they
yeah.
not
They
take
had they
that?
had a timeout. They had a 2 point lead. I mean, they weren't. There was no 10-second violation. So like, if he just holds onto the ball, it is what it is. You get
Right.
fouled. He was 6 for 6 from the line up until that point. So it's kind of like just tell him to hold on to the ball and take the foul.
Yeah, and they
So
even for
obviously in that
how
moment, it's easier to say that now than in the moment. But
right, but they did the whole foul up three, which is a pretty analytical play. They that I would argue worked because Connecticut only made one of the two free throws, and then
mhm.
like you said, the clock was low enough where it's just like just get the ball in bounds and make them foul you again. And to see Shire wanting him to throw it up the court, I was like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? But I mean, we're talking about Duke here, so I'm not going to feel bad in the slightest. But still, I was like, holy cow, this is insane.
Yeah, and then seeing Dan Hurley celebrate and kind of you got in the official face a little bit over something. I don't know what that was about, but just kind of cements him as being a bit of a jerk of a coach. But
I mean, he's a huge villain. Like, what was he doing? He not like headbutt the ref? And I feel like the Duke fans obviously were like, that's a technical and freaking out. And like, I mean, come on now, they're not going to call that. But at the same time, you have to wonder if like another random team's coach does that, they're definitely not getting away with it.
no, no, especially if it's a smaller school like Point or Hawaii or
Right.
some of those schools. Even if like Texas did that when they beat Gonzaga towards it's kind of interesting situations there. I remember
Yeah,
that.
they let him get away with that, and I was shocked. Even like if TJ or Ben McCollum do that, you think they're just gonna let him do that? I don't know. I was shocked.
Yeah, and then so we got UConn moving on to the Final Four from the East bracket, and then moving down to the South bracket. We had Iowa, Nebraska in the Sweet 16, which was a really good game and included some funny moments where Nebraska only had 4 players on the court for a key moment critical to the overall score. So what were your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, you talk about a absolutely bonehead move by Nebraska. I'll start there in what was a pretty entertaining game. Just like Mast was standing next to Hoiberg and as if he was like waiting to check in, probably offense for defense. Hoiberg all of a sudden like recognized it too late and was almost like, why are you not on the court? And you could see the Iowa players, I think it was like
Sturts, I think.
Sturts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sturts realized it right away.
he was like motioning for the inbounds to just go all the way down the court, and then Sage picked up on it. And I was just like, I was in shock, but obviously it made for an awesome moment. Plus, people saying like, should the refs notify him? It's like, no, why would the refs be in my opinion, the refs just shouldn't say anything either way because you're helping one team and hurting the other. So yeah, that was crazy. And then honestly, as an Iowa fan, that game was stressful to watch because anytime we like clawed back to tie the game or get within a field goal, we could not make a basket to get ahead. And usually the longer that happens, I'm of the opinion that you're just not meant to win the game. And then we get to
Mm.
3 minutes left. Those sequences happen. All of a sudden, we hit two threes. We're up six. And I'm like, holy cow, we're going to the Elite Eight. So Thursday night was a really fun one for me. Saturday night, obviously not as fun. And we'll get to that. But yeah, it obviously felt great to win the Sweet 16 game. But on top of it, against a rival fan base and who has been beaten by the Hawks for several games and
Yeah.
years in a row now.
Arguably your most hated out of state rival, no?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think it has to be.
And then on the flip side of that bracket, we had Illinois playing Houston in the Sweet 16. And that game actually surprised me that Illinois pretty much was in control the whole way, it felt like. At least after halftime, it seemed like they were in control. Houston just couldn't make a shot, going 9 for 32 from 3. Then we got to the free throw line 2 times to Illinois' 21, and Illinois missed 9 of those 21 free throws. They just manhandled Houston on the boards, 43 to 34. It's a really surprising game from Colin Sampson and Houston. I did not have Illinois projected to win this game in the slightest, and they sure did surprise me in that second half.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we talked about Houston's weaknesses being they just weren't as offensively talented this year, and they're not usually, but we also had mentioned their defense wasn't as dominant this year as the past few years. And I think that caught up to them because Illinois is so powerful on offense, just a lot of talent that can score. And you saw that Houston early on they weren't making shots, and I was like, even though it was a close game, I just felt like, man, it's going to take a lot for them to um, not only get ahead but stay ahead in this game. And ultimately, it kind of was true, and they didn't have quite enough.
Yeah, I mean, you got Fleming went 4 for 10, and Chris Phoenix Jr., the other talented freshman I have, went 3 for 12. Duvian went 2 for 11. So when three of their best players combined to go 9 for 33, that's not going to be a recipe for success.
Right, their stars didn't play well enough, and they ultimately were kind of overmatched in that game.
And then moving on to the Elite Eight of this bracket, the South bracket, you had Illinois versus. And that was a good game up until about 5 minutes left. And as Illinois is and just their strength down low, they seemed to be able to drive to the basket however they wanted.
Yeah, there's definitely a talent gap between Illinois and Iowa this year. I think everyone knew that. The Hawks' toughness kept them in the game for the first, like you said, about 33, 34 minutes. Ultimately, with about 6 or 7 minutes left, we kind of just ran out of steam, and Illinois' talent just kind of overtook the game between Wagler and Stojakovic. Just too much for the Hawks to stop, and then even the Visic brothers were just too tall. So it was really disappointing, and because you obviously don't know how often you're going to get games to make it to the Final Four. But at the same time, I was just like, I mean, I get it. We just didn't have quite enough firepower to make it that far, but still. Amazing first season for Ben McCollum and the Hawks. I'm going to be really sad to lose Sturts, but he did a ton for the program this season. And I think we're going to be keeping Ben McCollum, getting him an extension signed here soon. So the future's bright for the Hawks.
Yeah, and I did see that Tavian Banks already said even if he got another year of eligibility, he wouldn't be returning to basketball. Is that true?
Well, he said that in one interview. And then there's another video interview where he said, I don't know yet. We'll see if I get another year. So I don't know what to think. Originally, one of our beat writers said that he wasn't going to come back, but then another one said the opposite. We'll see. So for now, we for sure are losing Sturts, and then I feel like Banks won't be back, and then portal wise, we'll see what happens in terms of who stays and who goes. But we're definitely going to have a solid core back.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I really like Tate Sage, his performance in the tournament. I thought he really stepped up and just really played and really just being a role player and contributing at the bench.
Yeah, oh my gosh, he's surprised me. I love him. He's super tough. Knocks down threes, like 6'8", so he's got size. I think he's gonna be really good next year.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And then moving on to the Final Four matchup between the East and the South, you got Illinois and Utah. What are your thoughts on this game?
Man, I think it's gonna be a really good game. Ken Pom ratings, Illinois is ranked higher, pretty much everywhere, and so I think they're more talented too. But there's the whole just Dan Hurley factor, and it's not like UConn isn't talented. I think it's going to come down to the end. Part of me thinks Illinois is going to pull this one out and play for a championship, but I think it's going to be like a 2 to 4 point game either way.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good game. Both teams, I feel like both teams will play their style. I do think Illinois' style will be a little bit too much to weight down low. Players to watch out for UConn, I would definitely say Terrace Reed and Alex Harvey. I feel like they're kind of the heart and soul of their offense,
Yep.
and just really good players. So I think that will be a very interesting factor to watch, see how Illinois defends those two. And then Illinois with all the Vic they have from, Stojakovic and Yuzovic and Marjakovic, all those guys. Will be a very interesting matchup. And I think I'm probably gonna go with UConn in this one actually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if either team advances. I just think Illinois kind of just has a little bit of like team of destiny at least to get to the championship, but man, you can't count Dan Hurley out. So I just think this will be a fun game to watch. The funny thing is I don't think either team has much of a chance in the championship.
No, I don't think. I think the other side of the bracket, that Final Four, should really be the championship because those are arguably the two best teams in the tournament, hands down.
Yes, and I'll ask you a question about that once we get past that.
And looking at the West bracket here, we had Arizona playing Arkansas in the Sweet 16, and that game honestly wasn't even close. I mean, it kind of got ugly there. Arizona put up 109 points. And just what we've been saying for the past few weeks about Arizona, they're just so good. They have 8 starters, they have size, they have freshmen that don't play like freshmen. I mean, and they're coached by Tommy Lloyd, who is a great coach as well.
Yeah, he's found kind of that. Both he and Brad Underwood have found a skill of finding the elite European players, and like you said, they're just so dominant. Other than Darius Acuff scoring for Arkansas, no one else on their team could even do anything, and so pretty much from the start, you could tell they had no shot. And it was pretty much over by halftime. I think it was around like 10 points, but you knew that Arkansas wasn't going to be able to stop Arizona from scoring.
Yeah, I mean, it was it's hard to know as an Arkansas fan how to feel about that. You realize, you have to realize you're going up against Arizona, but then it still has to be disappointing that you got to that point and then weren't really ever in a position to win the game.
Right. And I mean, Arkansas fans, obviously, I'm tuned into this because of the Kentucky Arkansas kind of relationship with Cal Perry right now. But they're obviously like happy they made two Sweet 16s in a row, but Musselman was in two Elite Eights in a row. So it's like, I mean, you had Acuff have an awesome season. Cal obviously gets talented rosters, but where do you go from here? Because you made the Sweet 16 and then you weren't even close to advancing. So yeah, I don't know what to think.
But we would assume HF would go pro, right?
Yeah,
Most teams.
100%.
Yeah, so who knows what their team will look like next year and
Yeah, and
yeah.
Cal has another really good point guard coming in. I think Jordan Smith's his name. He's in the McDonald's game. But again, it's like, yeah, I mean, you had an unbelievable point guard this year, and we'll just see.
Yeah, they're looking at the bottom half of the bracket. Purdue and Texas is actually a really great game. Texas surprised, I think, everybody in this tournament, making the Sweet 16 and almost pulling it off and making the Elite Eight. But they ended up losing by 2 to Purdue on a second tip in.
Yeah, again, I was shocked that Purdue was struggling to just against Texas in general. I've been kind of higher on Texas than most with Sean Miller and just know that like that Dalen Swain and that blonde hair 7 footer who I can't pronounce his last name, they're both really good. So I knew they had the talent. Tremont Mark played a good game too. But yeah, I did not think that it was going to come down to essentially a buzzer beater. So fun game to watch. And yeah, Purdue ultimately advanced. That would have been kind of a meltdown, even though obviously they got to advance to play Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, as you said, so you got the European, well, they have the Metas guy, and I mean, even the guy who was most impressed by in that game was Trayvon Mark. He got injured during the game, and he kind of looked like he rolled his ankle a bit Not quite as bad as Joshua Jefferson did for Iowa State. He was horrible, but he came back in. He played, played good minutes in short spurts and was still making shots and driving to the hoop and doing what he needed to do. So I was extremely impressed by Trayvon.
Yeah, like I said, he was playing really well. He came out, started really hot. And then, like you said, obviously you hate to see anyone get injured at this time of the tournament or this time of the year. So that kind of hurt. But I mean, they still lost on a buzzer beater, so they were in it. And I look for Sean Miller, obviously only being his first year at Texas. I think they're going to be pretty strong under him. He's got plenty of resources.
Yeah, yeah. And then going down to the Midwest bracket, we have Michigan playing Alabama. And Alabama made a bit of a game for it for a bit, but Michigan is Michigan. I mean, they got Mario, their 7-footer. I mean, tough team to beat.
Yeah, they're right there with Arizona for how dominant they've been playing. Alabama, like we kind of knew, they would have had to hit like these to be in this one or to win. They were obviously in it. They're up at half. But Michigan in the second half just kind of pulled away. There was a little bit of chatter if Aiden Holloway was going to be able to play. He obviously ended up not. Phylon's really good. He had a big game, 35 points. But other than that, they just didn't have enough to compete with Michigan. And like you said, they're just kind of stacked across the board.
Yeah, and it's just crazy to me that Alabama took 47 three-pointers in that game. That just seems... And they had 69 total shots, so that means they only took 22 two-pointers. And that's just wild to think about that. Just crazy.
Right. I think Nate Oates knew that they had to shoot a lot of threes and make a lot of threes to have any chance. It's just unfortunately we only make 14 of 47. That's not gonna beat one of the best teams in the country.
Go down to the other half of the bracket. We have Tennessee beating Iowa State, led by 14, which it was close at halftime. Iowa State was down by 1, but offensive boards just killed Iowa State. Without Joshua Jefferson ended up not playing, and it sounds like he wasn't even close to playing. And even if they somehow beat Tennessee, he would have not been able to play on Sunday. Which, playing against Michigan without their best player does not sound fun. Uh, but Tennessee did a really great job just safeguarding Milan Manchovic and denying him the ball. He had kind of an awful game. Couple times he just had to force it up. He was 2 for 9. And this is his third straight Sweet 16 that he just kind of disappeared. And once teams realized he just focused on Milan, especially without Jefferson. Toy, who plans on returning, did alright offensively, 4 for 9 with 9 points. Lipsy in his final game in Iowa State put up 18, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, and really tried to do everything he could. And he is, I think, represents what Iowa State is so much, and that's just him being from Ames and him going to all the games and playing in 138 games, I think it was, in his career. Just an incredible player, and he will be sorely missed.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough ending to a really good season, not only because you didn't have Jefferson, but he just didn't have the best game. Like you said, Momchilovic, 2 for 8 from three. The free throws, everyone was talking about that. 15 for 25, just leaving a lot of points on the table. Once Tennessee got up 10 in the second half, it just never really got closer than that. And like you said, it ends up being a 14-point game. Tennessee, they're tough. Nate Ament, like we had talked about, 18 points. And then Jacoby Gillespie, the two guys I said to watch for, he had 16 as well. But yeah, I think it was more the story for us at least was just it just sucked that Iowa State went out this way with their star out. Like you said, I don't really think he was close to playing.
I don't think he was at all.
And if he did, it wouldn't have been like the true Joshua Jefferson. So they still had a chance in this game. They needed more from everyone.
They needed more from their bigs, and they did not get it. I mean,
Right.
no offense to Buchanan, our freshman played but they could not match the rebounding effort that Tennessee had, especially from Utapara and Carey, who each had 6 offensive rebounds apiece. I mean, it was brutal.
Yeah, and Rick Barnes is known for having these really big forwards. And yeah, the rebounding numbers being 43 too, essentially doubling them up. Like you're not going to win many NCAA tournament games with that
Yeah.
rebounding margin.
If Iowa State maybe only has 5 or 6 turnovers instead of 11, maybe it's a little bit closer of a game, but again, the 10 missed free throws. And I mean, I'm not really surprised by that because that's kind of what they've been doing all year. But I mean, obviously, in a 14-point game, if they get 5 more of those, then maybe it's cut down to a 5-point game, then maybe Tennessee gets a little more worried offensively and starts panicking a little bit, but Iowa State turns up the defensive pressure. And maybe something happens there. It's just a game that you knew kind of midway through the second half that Iowa State just wasn't going to have enough to get it done.
Exactly. And the free throws, like 60% is bad, but it's worse when you're in a one game do or die scenario. You need to make those. And when you're already down your star player, you just don't have much margin for error. And I think it finally caught up to Iowa State. And like we said, it's a bad ending to a really good season when you don't get to finish going out full strength. So just the way it works, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, shout out to Nate Hennessy. Did a great job trying to replace the offensive protection left behind by Jefferson, and actually did a really good job. We needed more rebounding in this game down low. We just didn't have it without Jefferson. But moving on to the Tennessee Michigan game, this was 16 to 15 early, and then I looked again, and it was 48-26 at halftime, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, that same thing. I was like, okay, Tennessee might make a game of this. Next thing you know, it was 20 some point game still in the first half. And it was basically like, all right, this is over. Michigan is just doing whatever they wanted. And they're unreal.
Yeah, and I mean, I was saying it's teasing with you before the game that, Tennessee might make a game of this. And, they did for about the first, 5 or 6 minutes, and then, yeah.
Yeah, there's not even much to say about the game because it was over at about the 10-minute mark in the first half.
You look at Tennessee's stats here. Gillespie 8 for 22, 2 for 12. I mean, man, that would have been nice if they had those numbers against Iowa State. But
Right, exactly.
but again, that just speaks to Michigan and their defense and their size down low. And I mean, Michigan is so solidly put together. Not only down low with Johnson Jr. and Mara. I mean, Lindborg, great guard. Carrier is his name, I think. He's another guard they have. The point guard was Tennessee. I mean, just an incredible team.
Yeah, I mean, Mara prevents you from driving, basically going to the rim at all when he's in. And then, like you said, I think Yaxel Lendenberg is like probably was the best transfer, and it shows he's just dominant. I don't love Cadeau, their point guard, North Carolina transfer. He's good. Like he's good enough to be just minimize mistakes. I don't think he's like a star player. But then they also Trey McKinney and Roddy Gale off the bench are two good bench players. Again, you only need about 7 guys this time of year at most, and their top 7 can go toe to toe with Arizona's top 7. So it's going to be an awesome Final Four game.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's nice anytime you have a 7 footer. You literally just have to throw it up at the rim, and he can finish it off for you with a dunk or hit and put it back up. I mean, that's so nice to have.
Yeah, some of the rebounds and tip-ins he gets are insane because he's like not even jumping. So it's fun to watch, but it's not fun to play against.
Yeah, and then we can find the four. We have 2 1 seeds, Arizona versus Michigan. Michigan is favored by a point and a half. And as you just said, Michigan's top 7 can go toe to toe with Arizona's top 7. This is arguably to me the championship game, and I'm really looking forward to watching this one.
Yeah, I think everyone agrees that the winner of this is gonna beat the winner of Connecticut, Illinois, barring some like epic upset.
Or injury of some sort.
Right, yeah. But if both teams go into the championship full strength, there's like no way I see Michigan or Arizona getting beat, and I think both of them would deserve the title.
Yeah, for sure.
But my question for you was, okay, let's do picks real quick, and then I'll give you the question.
Yeah. We have Arizona, this one just being from the Big 12, and watching Arizona a lot, and just watching them and their bigs, and just, Like, it's a team, being an Iowa State fan, I hate watching them because they're so good, and but they're also from the Big 12, so like you have to like you want them to win just for that Big 12 blood relation.
Right. And I'm obviously the Big Ten guy here, but I don't know. I picked Arizona to win it all since the start. I've been riding with them. I genuinely like watching them. I'm not a obviously I don't like Michigan, but I know how good they are. But for
Mm.
some reason, I just keep going back to feeling like Arizona's going to win this game. Yeah, I do think it's gonna be like a one possession game either way, but I'm gonna take Arizona with you. Sorry, Big Ten.
And then what was your question you had for me?
Yeah, so with everyone talking this week about Arizona, Michigan being the championship, essentially, what are your thoughts on reseeding the final four? So in this scenario, you would have Arizona as the better one seed. They would play Connecticut, or no, they'd play Illinois, a three seed, and then you would have Michigan as the worst of the two one seeds playing a two seed Connecticut team.
Yeah, I mean, I think like for this situation it would be okay, but like say Utah and Illinois were say they were say it was a 6 seed and an 8 seed and they somehow made the final four. That being reseeded, I think it kind of discourages the reseeding idea a little bit. But I mean, I definitely do agree with. I think Michigan and Arizona in the championship game with the reseeding aspect would be a lot better than having them play in the final four.
So you're saying if it was Michigan and Arizona on one side, but then it was like a 6 and an 8 on the other side, you would want it to stay that way?
Yeah, because I'd want one of the lower seeds because it gives so much hope to the other teams. Whereas if they know a reseed is coming and the other side has two 1 seeds and you're a 6 and 8, you're fighting an uphill battle. But if you're playing if you're playing a 3 or 4 seed or a 5 seed or a 6 seed, and say it was Iowa as a 9 seed, and they went through all that work, and I don't really feel like they're getting a true shot at getting to the championship game.
Yeah, I kind of like that point because it's like they have this Cinderella run to get to the Final Four. Why would you alter it now? But then obviously the flip side is the NCAA wanting to
Yeah,
protect the
money.
championship.
Yeah, money.
But they've done it this way forever, and everyone loves March Madness and the NCAA tournament. So I think you just leave it how it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you change it now, you're kind of rewriting history a bit because it's such a big change that like
Right.
how many things would be altered because of this.
Yeah, and then like there hasn't been many sevens, eights, nines ever even make the finals. So why like I don't think you need to worry too much. And then if you did this change, do you ever see a seed like that make it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you'd ever see the like championship game if you did the reseeding. That's for sure.
Right. So yeah.
But yeah, this very interesting idea that's been tossed around by uh, social media. Very interesting thing to cheer on and talk about. And if you have any ideas, you can always email me at therationalhomer@gmail.com and we can reply to you or talk about it on the future podcast. But one other thing we wanted to talk about was we got news today that you and I's coach of, what was it, 20, 25 years with the organization is leaving for Utah State and Ben Jacobson.
Yeah, kind of a shocker, although talking with some people who know the UNI Cedar Falls landscape better than I do, sounds like he's getting like double the salary at Utah State. He's getting a bunch more NIL money to work with, and his kids now are no longer in like school, like high school. So there's no reason for him to be like in the community. And I think he realized that with this NCAA tournament birth this year that maybe he knew he needed to use that to get a bigger job. His days of probably getting a Power 5 job are over, unless he had a crazy run. So I think at 55 years old, he's just trying to capitalize on a good season he had and just maybe make one more push for his coaching career.
Yeah, take on a new challenge. You spent 20 years at one place. You did a great job coaching there for 20 years. Not that you get bored or anything of it, but a new challenge and different conference, different teams. You get to coach against your former player, Ali Faruqeresh. As he coaches, I forget where he coaches at, but that will be
Yeah, he Colorado State. Yep.
yeah, that will be a fun interaction to see. And I think it's a good thing for both teams, and it sounds like you and I potentially might hire a former player Seth Tuttle, which would also be a very interesting and I'd say inviting thing for you and I to do.
Yeah, it sounds like he's one of the leading candidates. He's married to one of the biggest booster's daughter. So that helps him. He's a former
Just
player.
just just a little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah, right. So I think money is on Tuttle to become the next head coach, but they're having a couple other names thrown around. But we'll see. I bet it'll be done pretty quickly though, because the portal opens officially next week and you got to be ready to go.
You gotta be ready to go, that's for sure. As we wrap up episode 6 of The Rational Homer, Andy and I both believe that the winner of Michigan and Arizona will go on to win the national championship, the NCAA men's basketball tournament. And again, tuning in next week, we'll talk briefly probably about the national championship game. And then I'll be moving into predominantly baseball coverage for most of the summer. And remember, if you have any questions or comments or suggestions for sports-related content you'd like me to react to, send an email to rationalhomer@gmail.com.